Let's talk about a feeling that so many people know deep down but might not really have a name for. It's that experience of growing up way too fast. And it's usually not because of some big dramatic event. It's quieter than that. A gradual shift you barely notice until it's already happened.
Wow, that quote just says it all, doesn't it? It's not like one day you're a kid and the next you're not. It's a slow dawning realization, a quiet understanding that the roles in your life, in your family, are shifting.
And that is the turning point. Nobody sits them down and explains how to be an adult. They just look around, see a need for someone to be stable, for someone to be in charge, and they just step up, long before they ever should have had to. So, what's actually going on here psychologically? Let's take a closer look at this person we're calling the quiet adult and unpack the experience that creates them. The core idea here has a name. It's called parentification, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when a child is put in the position of being the emotional parent, either to their actual parents or their siblings. This is way more than just doing chores. It's about becoming the emotional shock absorber for the whole family. And here's something that's so important to get. This isn't about personality. These kids weren't just born old souls. Their strength, their maturity, it was an adaptation. It was a survival skill they were forced to learn because there was simply no other choice. So, how does having all this responsibility so early actually shape a person? How does it forge these specific traits and ways of thinking? Well, it turns out the brain itself literally adapts to the pressure. You can actually see it happen in a few steps. First, there's a need. The family needs an anchor. So, step two, the child learns to push their own needs and feelings down. Their stuff comes last. In doing that, they develop these incredible skills, like staying calm in a crisis. But then comes the final step, and this one really sticks. A belief forms deep inside them that being taken care of just feels weird, uncomfortable even. All of this leads to what psychologists sometimes call survival independence. Think about it. If the support you get as a kid is spotty or unreliable, you learn pretty fast not to count on it. You just stop asking, you stop expecting it, and you learn to handle everything completely on your own. And this creates this huge gap between how things look and how they actually feel. On the outside, you see someone who is incredibly capable, calm, totally self-reliant. They handle everything. But on the inside, that's a whole different story. They're struggling to trust people, they feel totally alone, and they find it almost impossible to just let someone else help them. This really gets us to the hidden cost of growing up too fast. While the outside looks strong and put together, the inner world is often, well, it's complicated. And it's pretty unsettled. There's a perfect term for this, split maturity. It's this idea that because you had to grow up so fast, some parts of you are incredibly wise and serious, but other parts, the parts that just needed to be a kid, to be messy, to be looked after, they never really got what they needed. So you end up feeling like you're both an old person and a young child all at the same time. This leads to a really strange internal experience. Let me just ask you, does this sound familiar? Have you ever wondered why just relaxing, doing nothing, can feel so incredibly dangerous? The reason goes all the way back to childhood. If you learned that quiet moments were always followed by a crisis, the calm before the storm, your nervous system literally learned to associate rest with danger. So now, as an adult, that programming is still running. Rest feels wrong, unproductive, even guilt-inducing. Being busy and useful, on the other hand, that feels safe. So, what happens when you take this unsettled inner world and try to build relationships? This is where we really see the high price of spending a lifetime taking care of everyone else. This belief right here is often at the very center of it all. The internal logic is so simple and so powerful. If I let someone take care of me, I am becoming a burden to them. And being a burden is the one thing they've spent their entire life trying to avoid. And you can see this belief in how they act. They might apologize for needing anything. They'll downplay their own problems, saying, oh, it's fine, it's not a big deal, when it really is. It's all designed to avoid making anyone else feel responsible for them. And it creates this amazing paradox called guarded empathy. Because they had to become experts at reading other people's emotions to survive, they're incredibly empathetic. They can walk into a room and instantly know how everyone is feeling. But they also know how draining it is to care that much. So they keep a protective wall up. They feel everything, but they keep themselves safe. So what's the takeaway here? Well, it's really about reframing this entire experience. This isn't a story about being broken. It's a story about adaptation. And the ending is about finally giving yourself permission to let go.
This shift in perspective is everything. Where you might feel broken, psychology sees someone who adapted brilliantly to unbelievable pressure. Where you feel damaged, it sees someone who learned responsibility long before they ever learned what it felt like to be safe. And when you feel weak for needing help, it sees a person who had to be strong long before they were ever allowed to just be soft.
And that brings us to the most important point of all. Healing from this isn't about becoming weak or needy. Not at all. It's simply about learning, deep in your bones, that the crisis is over. It's about finally understanding that you are allowed to rest. So, I'll leave you with a question to just sit with. If any of this felt familiar, were you made responsible for things a child should never have to carry? And is that a weight you're still carrying today?